Heyo everybody, Haku here with my live reaction or read through for Tower of God chapter 642 or season 3 episode 225, and I'm going to go ahead and say at the beginning, there's probably going to be a long Haku intro. I can imagine that the intro is going to be plenty long, just because after last week, there's a lot that we need to talk about before we start reading. So I think the big thing is going to be that, for those of you who don't know, season 3 ended with, 652, so we have 10 more chapters after this one, and season 3 ended. I think I might have accidentally said season 2. Season 3 ended, and we're going to potentially have a hiatus, then we're going to get a spin-off or side story, then we're going to get season 4. I'm excited for the spin-off or side story. I wonder what CU's going to do with that. Is it going to be Wangnan? I feel like that makes the most logical sense. It could be anything else though, so I think that's pretty exciting. And honestly, for us as official readers, for those of you who are watching, who are also waiting for the official release, that means that since we're already 3 months behind, honestly, the break between season 2 and season 3, season 2 ended in like January, and season 3 started in like March. So there was only a 2-ish month break that time. So honestly, CU and Tower of God could be back with whatever's next before we're even caught up to the end of season 3. So we might even not get caught up to season 3 before, whatever next happens. And I hope that when we do come back, we're not 12 chapters behind. Maybe it's a little bit less extreme. Maybe we come back and we'll be back to being like 3 to 6 chapters behind, which is still a lot. A lot can happen in 3 to 6 chapters, but it's not quite so egregious as a full like 3 months of chapters. That's pretty rough. So what this means for the story though is this arc, whatever is going on here, this stuff's gonna end in 10 more chapters after this one. Now again, especially a ton happened in last week's chapter. So if we're moving at that kind of pacing, then so much can happen in just 11 more chapters, this one plus the next 10. But still, I gotta have it in me to be a little bit critical here, because it does make me think, okay, we only have 10 more or whatever. And talking about last week's chapter and how great, how incredible it was a little bit rushed in terms of, okay, now we're having this and we're also doing all of this and all of this, when really I think it would have been more emotionally impactful if we had developed it a bit more, if we had paced it out a bit better. I feel as though, everybody talked about like the nest being kind of like Tower of God's Marineford, because structurally it was really kind of similar to that. Well, the sprout is totally Tower of God's Wano in a lot of ways. So one issue that I had with Wano, and I won't get into One Piece spoilers for anybody not caught up with that, one issue with Wano is that it's like, I don't even know how many chapters long, at least 120, but I think it's closer to 150 to 160 chapters long. And there are so many things that fans really, really wanted to see that got off-screened or skimmed over, and then Oda just explained it later in the SBSs, which are like a Q&A type thing. So we just kind of answered what happened in those circumstances later on, and we didn't get to see that. But meanwhile, this is 150 to 160 chapters long, and there's a lot of wasted time. I have long said that Wano, that 150, 160 chapters, could have been written in like 40 chapters and hit every single plot point. All of the plot, all of the story remained the same. It's just there's a lot of fluff, a lot of wasted time. And that's the Sprout. The Sprout, we crammed all of the stuff that happened last chapter into one chapter when pacing. Imagine if, we finished the first round of things with Dumas, and this is when Revolution's coming in and everything, and we get a little bit of the stuff that happened last chapter there. We get maybe a little bit of the Kirin and Lobadan fight, or we get some of the stuff with the new characters being introduced. And then we go into the round 2 of the Dumas stuff. Then we get a little bit more of that. Then we get into the Tromrei versus Gastang stuff, and then we finish out what happened last chapter and have Yurik showing up at the end. I think that, could have been paced out a lot better instead of us going months and months without us seeing any of this. And the way that it connects back to Wano is a lot of this stuff that would have been really interesting. Having Cha get an actual fight, having some development for these high-ranker characters, having the new characters come in, get to have a little bit more personality and presence, though I think that they were great just in one chapter last time. Fleshing out some of this story here, I think, could have been very well done. But we didn't spend time on that. We kind of off-screened or skimmed over a lot of things, or really hurriedly got through a lot of things. And I don't want that to take away from how good last chapter was. I think having Yama get that fight in was really good too. But meanwhile, we didn't spend time on this. We spent months away from it. Meanwhile, what we have seen could have definitely been shortened by quite a bit. So Bomb versus Dumas, I think the choreography of it and the moment to moment, the Bomb versus Dumas, I said when I was reading the chapters, it is good in a vacuum if I had never ever read Tower of God before, but there's also a why is this happening kind of idea here, where I really feel like if after the first defeat, the trio was defeated, Dumas was like, wow, I really respect what they did. Gaston gets the memories, then we go into the Gaston memory stuff, we get the stuff we just saw here, I think that Bomb going the second round with Dumas was really unnecessary. He should have maybe just stayed down for a while. I don't think we really needed to see Bomb versus Dumas round 2, but even if we did see it, because again, the choreography, everything was still good, I think that there was enough there that was fluff or just going back over things that we had already seen. It could definitely be shortened a chapter. The stuff here with Tromrei and Gaston fighting, again, while very good, the character stuff has been very good. The actual fighting itself has been hit and miss, and there are a lot of things that could have been pared down a lot and saved a lot of time. Definitely one huge example is the stuff going on with Andorthy and Bellerir. There's the one Andorthy, Bellerir, and Bomb chapter that should have been maybe a third of a chapter max, that ends with the Bellerir touching the V-hole stuff. It ends with that stuff. And it really seemed like CU wanted to end a chapter on that stuff, but he did not have the content to make a full chapter. So he just kind of repeats things happening 3 times. And a lot of time is wasted there, where that's maybe that should have been a third of a chapter max. And I think the biggest thing to compare it to, again, I've talked before about, and before I get into what I was about to say, I will say that going on a hiatus, I think this is a really, really good thing about going on a hiatus, is all the stuff I've been talking about. When we came back from the last hiatus, CU said one of the reasons for the last hiatus was to plot out the next arc. And then you go into the hotel. I can't think of any way the hotel could have been dramatically shortened, while still maintaining all of the story beats. All of its story beats, all of its pacing was extremely well done. It was extremely well organized. And comparing that to what we have here in the Sprout is genuinely, again, we have had some good chapters. We have had some good moments, some good storytelling with the characters. The Sprout is the worst arc in Tower of God by a long shot. It's not even close. It's really poorly organized, and a lot of the stuff is really poorly written compared to past Tower of God stuff. And so I think that CU taking this break, taking this hiatus to organize the arc, will make the next arc so much better. He really should have done that before the Sprout, because the Sprout has been a complete mess. And I think the best example of it, what I was just about to say, the best example is when we compare the Sprout and the branch leader fights to the fights against Yusrach's minions. It's something that I bring up a lot, and I'm bringing it up here in terms of pacing. So when we get Hachonhi versus Lopobia Hasacha, that's half a chapter, and in that half a chapter we get 2 character backstories, we get a fight that gives development, a lot of development to both characters. We come out of that knowing so much about each of the characters' personalities, their goals, what's driving them. You could argue that it also develops Yasracha a bit because of the Hasacha connection. I don't really think so much, but it does develop Calavan a lot, and the connection and what Calavan means to Chonhi and the effect that he's had on Chonhi, that develops Calavan a lot. So we get development for two characters, we get two backstories, we get development for Calavan through that, and we get lore on the Ha family. We get all of that in half a chapter. And then you go to Yu Hansung versus Haracha. We again get a really detailed backstory that gives some more lore on the tower. It develops Haracha as a character. You get Haracha. You get the tragedy of his character. It develops Yu Hansung more as a character. It hints at deeper lore stuff with Yu Hansung, and we know that that likely connects into blood matter, likely connects into the 10 families. We also use this to develop Yasracha's character more, because that is really important to Haracha's backstory. We connect it in with Yu Hansung's relationship to Evankel at the end. We get all of this stuff in one single chapter. Meanwhile, when we look at these branch leader fights, what can you tell me about the branch leader's actual personal characteristics? What makes them unique? How do they stand out personally? They don't really. They don't. When it comes to their fighting, some of the fighting stuff is kind of cool, but again, what we saw from them is kind of like simple. It's kind of basic. It almost feels kind of weak compared to some regulars we've seen, let alone rankers, not even close to what a high ranker should be presented like. It looks really, really bad. We don't get any backstories for any of them. They aren't generally used to help build up Traumeray's character anymore, which is something that could have been done. Really, we get very little out of that fight except for power-ups for the main trio and Dumas looking cool. So we build Dumas a little, but again, we're talking about how little we get there. That was at least 6 chapters, probably more. So again, for multiple times the amount of screen time that CU is taking up here, he is delivering far, far, far less story. And that would be my example of this, you know, the Sprout arc compared to past arcs, in terms of taking a lot more time to give us way less story. There is so much less story content in most of this stuff. And I think too, I didn't know when reading last week that we were going on hiatus, that the season had ended. I didn't know any of this when I did last week's video. But now going into this week's video, I learned about it after recording and doing my video last week. But also, after doing that, I read the statement that CU made about going into the hiatus. And he's like, yeah, I've seen all the complaints and all the criticisms people have had, and I'm going to be working harder to do better, but I couldn't really fix it this season because, you know, things were already in play, things were already in motion, and I think that's totally reasonable because we don't know. He could have to prepare this because he has a whole team working with him, he has to probably get things approved by Webtoons, all of that kind of stuff. Like, he could have this, like, you know, months ahead of us as official readers, but even for the raw Korean readers, there's probably even more months ahead that things have to be planned out to even get to that stage. So it does make sense to a certain degree that he's like, well, you know, I can't completely course correct here. But just looking recently, again, some statistics were shown with me and I can look back at the chapters myself. You can see how the amount of engagement and impressions, whether it's likes, comments, everything on the chapters, are at their peak in the Workshop Battle Return of the Prince stuff. They start tapering off a little bit, but they're still really high throughout Hell Train. And then going into season 3, they start to dip. And with each hiatus, they dip more because people leave during the hiatus and people don't come back. But, you know, the series should really be good enough to be bringing people back. But the thing is, the impressions get lower and lower, but they were even still up pretty decently high when it comes to coming out of the last hiatus. When we're in the hotel, when we're going through the stuff after the hotel, they drop dramatically. We're probably going from like an average of like 50,000 likes or so, even on the English chapters in the pre-Sprout stuff, to like 20,000 in the Sprout. Like, there is a dramatic drop off in the amount of impressions on Tower of God chapters. And also when you look at the Korean chapters where they actually have a rating system 1 through 10, things, whether they're at their peak in, season 2 with Return of the Prince and Workshop Battle through Hell Train, the general chapter scores are staying like in the 9 and 10 area, because the people who are sticking with the series long term are people who are enjoying it. But then you get into season 3, and the later you get into season 3, the more you get extremely low scores, until finally getting to the Sprout, where there are just constant like 3 out of 10, 5 out of 10 scores for these chapters. And to me, when I look at this, again, like I'm getting way off topic into analysis of Tower of God, if I'm CU and if I want to try to fix things coming out of hiatus, when I look back at the chapters that have these really good scores and the chapters that have these really bad scores, I joke around and say bomb chapters versus non-bomb chapters, but in reality, the chapters that have these, 10 like close to 10 out of 10 scores, they're chapters where we're getting into lore stuff, which we can't do all the time. You can't just have that be the entire story. It's when we get into lore stuff, it's mostly when we're into deep character stuff, and it's when we're moving around to multiple different things. And when you look at all these chapters where they're like incredibly low scores, it's not just haha bomb chapter, because some of the Tromare and Gustang chapters were low. It's chapters where we have these long multi-chapter fights, which is again something we didn't have back in old Tower of God. It's not Dragon Ball Z. And when we get into these long multiple chapter fights, it's when we get into some of the issues with the art, where we have these massive long panels that are often really, really wasting a lot of time. And this is something else with visual information, with CU taking more panels, more time to give us less story content. A panel isn't wasted with Yama's punching last chapter. So let's say we have a panel of Yama holding his fist back. That delivers visual information to us as a reader. We know, okay, he's preparing a punch. Then we see another panel with his fist going forward, punching, and the character flying back. Okay, he punched, and then they flew back. You could even add a panel of them, like him punching, and then a panel of them dodging out of the way. You could extend it for more panels, but none of those panels are wasted, because each of them is delivering information. Each of them is delivering story. But we have a lot of panels in a lot of these fights here that are completely wasted. I talked about it a lot with the Bomb and Dumas stuff, where you'll have a panel of a character punching, and then you might have 2 or 3 of the same punch. Though if giving us another panel of that punch tells us how a character is reacting to that punch. Are they straining? The visual information we're getting is that they are having trouble, or is it being blocked? The visual information we're receiving is that it's being blocked. But there's so many panels we get in a lot of these long multi-chapter fights where a beam will be fired. We'll get another panel of the beam, but it's not giving us any information on the trajectory. It's not giving us any information on whether it's being blocked or dodged. We're just not getting any new information on it. So that's a wasted panel. It might look nice. Some of these panels are even really detailed with a bunch of stuff going on in the background, but it's stuff we already knew was happening, or stuff that isn't telling us anything new. So that's a completely wasted panel. That's a lot of time spent on something that isn't delivering any information to us as readers. And when we get into these long fights, they're a lot like that, and a lot of like really unnecessarily long panels that most of the time don't even look that great, compared to, again, you look at season 2's artwork and the paneling, the pacing of it was much better, where it's really overdone in season 3, and there are times when that's not a problem. There are times when things are still good, and there are times when things are bad. So again, if I'm CU and I want to come out of this hiatus and kind of step things up, there are chapters where characters are just talking to each other that are getting near 10 out of 10s, and all the comments are positive, and then chapters of these big fights that are getting bad scores and everybody's complaining about how bad it looks. For me, going into the future, leave these big, long, multi-chapter fights behind for the most part. You can have them every now and again, because people didn't complain about Bomb versus Ren being a multi-chaptered fight, because that was a really well-written fight, really well choreographed. Everything there made sense. And people didn't complain about it when it was Mircea versus Mazano. Because again, it was really well written. So you can do those. If they're well written, you can still do them. But I think for the most part, leave these long fights in the past. Shorten things. Have things like we had last chapter with Yama fighting the new characters. Have something like that. I think that still works. It can be shorter and still be impactful, still give us what we need to know. Because some of these fights are just way too long. They're bloated. Like I was saying for weeks now, where it felt like Traumerei versus Gaston, there were a lot of chapters where it felt like it was spinning wheels. It was just, we start the chapter and we end the chapter and we feel like we're in the same place with that fight. So I think leave that behind and focus on the character stuff. Because that's what people respond to the most positively. People want good character writing. People want good character writing more than just beams flying everywhere. So I think looking back at the chapters that scored well and didn't score well, that's what I would focus on in the future, is focus on the character stuff. And really, because I had so much to say about all of this, I feel like I am very much sort of off topic. Like, I've gotten so far from some things I wanted to say, and there are some things that I wanted to say that, I feel like I'd waste time talking about them here just because they don't really fit in with what we're talking about for this chapter. So I'm going to go ahead and just start reading the chapter, but I did want to put that here just to express how there have been issues that have been building in Tower of God for a long time, but I think, to me, and to a lot of the people I know that read, it's like, okay, this is an issue. It's kind of a long-running issue. It's been around since kind of late season 2, but you can overlook it because it's not that bad. It's not that egregious. You can kind of overlook it up until the Sprout. It's like, okay, it's not that bad. But then you get into the Sprout, and some things that were kind of small problems have become massive problems in the Sprout. The Sprout has just been really disorganized. The writing's been really bad. Again, that's not to say there haven't been good things, like a lot of the flashbacks, but most of it hasn't been handled very well. And I think that having the stuff we saw last chapter paced out more throughout the arc probably would have helped it a lot. I think cutting down on a lot of the, like, Andorthi and Bellerir stuff, who cares? Cutting back on some of that stuff. Kind of shortening Bomb versus Dumas, or just not having the second Bomb versus Dumas fight. Not having as much of the fight as we've had so far of Traumerei and Gaston, I think probably would have helped us a lot. Something that, I did want to talk about that is one of those things that, was kind of a small problem for a while that becomes more of an egregious problem in the Sprout, is power scaling. People have complained about power scaling, especially when it comes to Bomb, for a long, long time. But I think that to a certain degree it can be kind of forgivable. In the past, we thought that rankers were like untouchable compared to regulars, but the more we get into things, the more we see random soldiers, and they're like, they're ranker level soldiers. It's like, okay, so random people can be ranker level, so rankers aren't as special as we thought they were. And Bomb was already, at the end of season 2, he was somebody that could at least stand up and stay in the realm of Charlie. He was somebody who was a regular, but he was a very strong regular. He was able to keep up with Zahard, where Zahard was also at that point in his climb. And that seems completely reasonable for Bomb as a main character who's an irregular. But then we get into season 3, and a lot of people complain at how quickly things escalate with Bomb. And I think that is true, but if you want me to play devil's advocate for Bomb's power scaling, you could say before the Sprout it really wasn't that bad in terms of, so in the cage, Bomb can stand up to R's brother or whatever, just random ranker. And then when it comes to Gato, who is a high ranker, Bomb can't fight him. Bomb can't fight Gato. But what Bomb can do is help to slow down Gato so that Kanzon, another high ranker, can fight Gato. Bomb can play an assisting role. He can help out. Bomb fights against Delete in the next arc. And Delete is a ranker, but maybe an advanced ranker. Delete was pretty strong seeming. Bomb could fight him, but with the asterisk there of with Kun buffing him, and with Rak providing assistance by throwing rocks and all of that. So with assistance, he can fight a pretty strong ranker. And then we go and we see how much he's grown. He defeats the test ranker Pan. Again, all of this is like, okay, Bomb is ranker level. fair enough. We've had the time skip. We've seen all this different stuff. And I think the big problem is mainly the presentation, mainly just throwing power up after power up after power up without actually properly developing him or having him work for them or anything like that. But really, the power scaling is seeming pretty stable here. Until we get to Bomb vs. White, which again, you can still run defense for Bomb vs. White. Because in Bomb vs. White, White wasn't trying to kill him, White was trying to corrupt him. And before Bomb goes crazy irregular mode, reviving himself, turning back time, whatever, before that, White was just completely embarrassing him. Bomb couldn't do anything. Bomb couldn't do anything whatsoever. And you could also maybe argue that White had used up some of his powers after fighting Caliban, so maybe we could say he was a little bit weaker to soften the blow. But even then, Bomb couldn't keep up with him whatsoever, and Bomb, enters special irregular mode, he loses control, and then also after losing control, he gets help from Kun and Rak, with Kun buffing him and Rak throwing the spear, the ancient spear, through White. So again, it's one of those things where Bomb, the next arc after that, said, hey, I know I did that there, but I couldn't do that again if I wanted to. That's just because I lost control. So again, you could say that that was just something where Bomb lost control. You could say that things are still relatively stable. He fights against Ren, and he basically has to pull everything out. It's a really good fight. They both struggle. They both damage each other, and that's a really good fight. So it seems like Bomb is still pretty stable power scaling wise. And then you get to the Sprout, and Bomb just kind of fights and defeats a high ranker and a branch leader at that. Again, the branch leaders looked terrible, but it's one of those things where before this, Bomb was kind of ranker level, and for anything past that, you could kind of run defense for Bomb and run defense for the riding. You could say, well, there's this asterisk here. Well, there's this asterisk here. And that's why Bomb was able to do that. But then in the Sprout, suddenly Bomb's just fine fighting high rankers, and it's like no big deal. They don't really make much a big deal about it. It's just, oh yeah, he can beat high rankers now. Bomb just does that. So I think it's one of those things where even before the Sprout, it's like some of these things that were small issues, and if people had issues with Bomb's power scaling before the Sprout, I don't blame them whatsoever, because there are some weird issues in the writing. Again, just giving him a bunch of power-ups. But you compare that to the Sprout, and it's like it's not that bad before this arc, and then in this arc, it just seems to go off the deep end. The same thing goes with the presentation of the family heads, having even when Traumerei shows up to fight Nen Nen, and all the people looking up, their eyes are burning just looking at Traumerei. And even though we have characters here who are special, like Aunt Dorothy, she's special, she's still just kind of fine while the family heads are unleashing their true power. She's just kind of fine hanging around. She's a princess. I feel like I can give that writing some leeway, but it does kind of mess with the specialness of the family heads when it's just when people are treating them the way that they're treating them. So I just think that before the Sprout, CU should have taken another hiatus to organize the arc, because it's been a mess and we only have 10 chapters left. I think that it makes total sense, because I think after last week's chapter, we did see the boss being like, yeah, we took out 2 of the 10 families. 2 of the 10 families are basically gone at this point. The Lupo B and Popodao families, they're basically nothing anymore. So they're like, we'll fight the family heads next time. I joked about them just dipping out and leaving. I could see that happening. Plus, like I said, a lot can happen in just 10 chapters. But I don't know. Now that I know I only have 10 chapters left, and anything left that we're going to see happen in this arc is only going to happen in 11 chapters technically, because I need to read this chapter. It just makes me think, wow, we wasted so much time. We wasted a lot of time this arc, and we off-screened or skimmed over a lot of things that'd be more important. Also, I don't know if I may or may not have been spoiled, but some people were talking as if Doom and Dewan are actually dead. And for me, this could be hilarious to all of you if you've read ahead and you know if they are actually dead or not. For me, I was just assuming they're going to be fine. Doom was comedically just cardboard posed and everything. It happened off screen to a guy in a astronaut suit that we know nothing about. The Dewan panel seemed comedic. She seemed to kind of have an face where she had a cartoony face as she was getting shocked. It seemed comedic. So if they were off screen for months, We didn't check in with them. We didn't get any more development. They were off screen for months, and they come back to get comedically killed by new characters showing up, who then run away, who like can't take Yama, run away from Yurik, all of this stuff. That is going to be a depressingly common CUL. Like, if they're actually dead, that is depressingly silly. That is a goofy, memey way to kill characters. If they're actually dead from such a jokey scenario. But either way, all of that aside, massively long Haku intro. I knew I wanted to do one, since we're now coming up on a hiatus. Also, because of the hiatus, I was talking for months and months about doing another character poll at 652, and doing it at chapter 650. But now that we know it's ending at 652, it makes more sense to do the character poll at 652. So I think that a better way to do it would be to have the poll for the month leading up to 652, when people are still thinking about Tower of God, rather than have it afterward where people are just on hiatus. I think it'd be better to have it during the actual chapters, the last few chapters, and then the poll ends at 652 and we'll have the results at 652, rather than starting it at 652. So the month before 652, the poll will start. But either way, that's it. Let's actually read the chapter this time around, and hopefully it's good. Again, we only have 11 chapters. I'm hoping we end the season out well, because, again, the arc's been hit and miss to say the least. We start off with our violence warning. Ratnagra, and we're seeing that again. My name is Ratnagra, which backwards is Regantar. So, you know, maybe the Ha family replacement. I think Ha family replacement makes the most sense. We also do know that all of the family heads were throwing in things that they didn't like to the red dump. So there could definitely be a lot of just illegitimate lineages to the 10 families in there, possible clones or parts of themselves they've split off. There could be a lot of things going on in the red dump. I've left the dump and come here, we saw this last time, to claim my place among the 10 great family heads. We have Yama. However, cute though you may be, I won't allow a little mutt to bother my family. Okay, so I wonder then if they are just parts of her family rather than also being family head candidates. And if they're not family head candidates, that makes, if no one's actually dead, that makes it even sillier. Ratnagra. You finally left the floating carrier, or maybe she just considers everyone from the red dump her family. That could be a character trait. That's right. It's not as bad out here as I thought. I like the smell of blood in the air. Although it's not quite as pungent as in the dump we come from. I really would have liked for them to have given it a different name. That puppy over there looks furious for some reason. But then again, I'm used to taming beasts like you. If you want to take your anger out on someone, you might as well do it to me. He charges at Ratnagra. When an animal misbehaves and doesn't know its place, and we see this, she was holding it towards the end of last chapter, when we see her react to Yurik showing up, sometimes you just need to smack some sense into it. Alright. Having more panels? He didn't even flinch at my blow. He keeps coming at me. She goes to swing again. And we're seeing blood being shed, but he's just face tanking it. She laughs as the blood flies over her. I like you. Yeah, I thought you were just a naughty little puppy acting up. Are there more warriors like you around here? Battle between the family leaders, Intruders Part 2. And now we're seeing the shot we saw last time of the Daejang. We have the battlefield here with Yurik. What a mess! As a result of a fight between two fools, we have all these dead bodies. So many lives have been lost. And to make matters worse, there are even assholes who have come here in hopes of profiting from the war. That must be them over there. We see still the opposing Michelle. Is he coming this way? Oh no. I need to get out of here. He brings out the cell phone. Too slow. And did Yurik just warp in? We're seeing the Shipwan Ryu seemingly activating, and we have Yule. Okay. Yule is exciting. So is Yule on the Shipwan Ryu? Last we knew, he was imprisoned within the Ark of Knowledge. We have this light. In that moment, Hugo had the chance to witness the most intense punch of her entire life. A punch even stronger than the one she had experienced recently. But it was such a brief moment. And it looks like the Shipwan Ryu is getting burst apart, that her eyes couldn't even follow what happened. The main core of the Shipwan Ryu is taken out from it, and the arms are flying off to the sides. Okay. The enemy ship was destroyed. How the hell did he blow up a ship like that in one hit? I didn't even see the attack. But Proust, there's nothing we can do. Running away is our best bet. I doubt anyone in the whole tower. Send out an announcement to all troops. Could survive a head-on battle with that beast. And it makes me wonder too if CU saw the bad reception and was kind of rushing to an ending here, because it is disappointing, especially if we don't get back to this stuff later, how little how little Proust was developed compared to Dumas, for example, or how little we saw of Lobadan versus Kirin. I think that's a fight that should have been fleshed out a lot more. We should have had flashbacks there. I think flashbacks for Lobadan and Kirin could have been very instrumental in properly developing Traumerei even more than he's already been developed, because we've seen so much of his backstory of like the young family head and so much of current Traumerei, but there is this big blank spot that it feels has been inconsistently explained to us, and it would have been nice to see that in a more concrete fashion of him with his family. Tell them not to lay a finger on that guy. And then, now then, it's time to get rid of that massive piece of junk. And I sure didn't see that coming. Let's pull back for now. We have the Revolution ship charging up again, and it blasts like before. Yurik, I believe, deflects it downward, maybe? And then as he's looking, it's forming one of those warp patterns like before. Are they trying to escape? We're retreating. We have the blood-soaked Ratnagra. Return to the ship, everyone. Damn it. We should get out of here, too. We have Kirin and 13. Yes, sir. Everyone's retreating back. Do you think I'm going to let you leave? Says Mazano. And, oh, we're seeing the disconnect thing that Traumerei had going on, where it seemed like he had a portal looking in before. And he's above where they're fighting, it looks like. There's that Four Eyes. That must be the leader of the Pobedao family. I think they got Lopobia and Pobedao mixed up. It looks like they've already begun their duel. Who are they? That's the family head. The family head, are you sure? Yeah, I've seen him from a distance before. I swear on my honor as a high ranker, that's our family head. We have Proust now. Lord Castang. Father. And we see Lobadan. The high ranker says that's our family head. He's fighting to protect us. Come on, let's go help him. And we have both sides rushing in. Defend the Lopobia family's honor. Bring glory to the Pobedao family. The great family head shedding blood on our behalf. Those damn fools. For now. I'd better stop them. Unleash. And now we're seeing the Dark Charge. And we see reality shatter around Mazano again. What the? Stay out of this. Luzlek. What's this now? They both look down. Lopo be a traumare. He's absorbing the souls of his family members. And also the Popadal family members. Is he drawing the dead towards himself? And if no one's actually dead, that's such a freaking comedic way to die. Introduce a character, spend so much time on her. Most of the fans don't like her. Even though she did well in the character poll, there are definitely people that like her. I think the hate's maybe a little overblown, but I also get why people wouldn't like her. But it seems like people are generally pretty split on her. And then just kill her in what seems like a comedy scene? They're disappearing. No. And Cha, just like, I get being emotional over Dewan makes sense for his character, but it also just seems so silly in its presentation. I think because we didn't properly develop them enough, we didn't spend enough time with them. Yeah, it's all being drawn into the creature Traumare brought out before. And I wonder if that creature is just an amalgam of all the dead, or if it's a representation of Traumare himself. All the spirits of the dead are being sucked into that thing, that huge evil monster. Father. We have Kirin escaping and looking back. I see. So this is who you really are. What a sight to behold. And we have the Daejang. If we were a moment too late, we might have been devoured as well. I wish I could see how this battle ends, but I'll have to let Belarir handle the rest and get out of here. Let's go. And they're wearing gloves. Is that the boss then on the phone? It's just weird seeing them with smartphones. Let's go. If phone designs change like 10, 20 years from now, this is going to age so weirdly. It'd be like seeing them all with flip phones. I'll let them go for the time being. The most important thing right now is to put a stop to this tragedy somehow. I know I promised not to meddle in your affairs, but that bastard crossed the line. I won't allow this nonsense to go on any longer. And that's where we end. I'm torn. I don't know. Let me show the credits. There was an chapter. Like, it's exciting to have these characters around, but I feel torn on how consistent their personalities or their characters are. I feel torn on some of the things happening. Like, Revolution leaving, that's fine. It seemed reasonable that they were like, hey, we took out 2 of the 10 families. We're not fighting the family heads this time. We're just going to leave. Reasonable enough. It makes sense why Luzlek is here. I would have expected him to hide himself more, but it would make sense that he wants to keep Revolution intact, to keep causing chaos and all of that, because that's helpful for FUG's goals. But I don't know. I don't know how I feel about a lot of this. Especially Dewan. If Dewan's really dead, that's so goofy. That is so silly if Dewan is actually dead. Again, depressingly common CUL, if so, but yeah, I don't. This arc, it will be nice to just go ahead and end this arc. It has been, again, I don't want to mince words. The Amazu flashback was good. The V's flashback, I'm honestly a little torn on it because I don't really like how it fits into the lore that well. I also don't really like how we're doing this thing where we only see family heads we've already seen and we don't see the other ones because they're just not around for mysterious reasons so that we don't see them. I think that's a bit goofy. And I question the placement of it. Do we really need it here? The stuff in the present time, the branch leader stuff is probably some of the worst written stuff in Tower of God because it's a lot of time spent on nothing. The first, main character trio power up and then fight Dumas is not great. Bomb versus Dumas, if you've never read Tower of God before, I think is good. But then when you put it in the context of the wider story, it's like, why are we seeing this? That probably shouldn't have happened. Traumaray versus Gustang, the character work has been good, but the fighting has been not great, and I feel like we just really didn't do a good enough job being consistent with things. I think that pacing and consistency especially, like saying, oh, there are 20 branch leaders, but then not properly fleshing the 20 out and explaining, okay, this is how the 20 work. I think just not being consistent with things or saying that, oh, this is the way things are, and then having things kind of left too vague or not aligning with what we've been told in the past is not great. The pacing, again, has been particularly bad. I just think that, again, for all the previous arcs, I really like the hotel. The hotel might even be one of my favorites. I really like the nest. I like the rest of season 3. There are some problems in the writing that have been building, but all these problems that have been building, it's like they took a steep decline in the Sprout. Before the Sprout, it's like, okay, these are problems, but you can kind of say, okay, things are a little different. You can kind of overlook them a little bit and still enjoy what's going on. But then you get to the Sprout and it's like these things that were small problems have now become very large problems. We didn't address them when they were small, and now they have become very, very large. So I think it'll be nice to have this arc be over with because it's been really, really bad. And then CU can take some time to rest, hopefully take a break, and then plot out where he wants to go from here and hopefully fix a lot of things. Because again, it's not that CU can't, because he did before. Tower of God pre-Helltrain is incredible. Tower of God Helltrain is also pretty incredible. I think it's still very, very good. Tower of God Season 3 before the Sprout, I also think is very good. It is definitely more hit and miss. There's definitely a lot more misses, a lot of grander things with the story that's like, what is CU doing? Why are we jumping forward so quickly? Which is like really diverting from the pace that season 1 and 2 gave us, really diverting from the story that season 1 and 2 gave us. Why are we doing this in season 3? There are a lot of things like that, but generally, even though it's a bit of a different story, I still think it's a solid enough story. I still had fun before the Sprout, and even in the Sprout, I'm still having fun getting to spend time with you all and getting the good chapters here and there that we do get. But I would say most of the chapters haven't been good chapters. I think the Sprout has been a bad arc, and I think that hopefully CU can end it, and we can have this break, and we can come back, and CU can, instead of continuing with this, he can maybe learn from the stuff that people didn't like about the Sprout, and wider season 3 stuff, and maybe he can internalize and think more about the things that people do and did like and the things that people don't and didn't like, and he can move forward in a way where we focus more on the things that have been good and sort of repair or mend the things that haven't been good. I think a lot of people, if we went back to climbing the tower normally, would complain. It's like, we just saw our main characters fighting against high rankers and stuff. Why are they climbing the tower normally? But it's like, that is less of an extreme jump than the extreme jumps we've seen going from season 2 to some of the stuff we've been seeing in season 3. So honestly, if we just said, hey, they're climbing the tower normally again, I really wouldn't complain. It's like, yeah, they've been fighting high rankers, but who cares? I just would rather see them climb again. I'd rather see them climb than see this stuff. So yeah, we'll see where things go. We still have 10 more chapters. I am not impressed with this one. We had a really good chapter last week. Again, the Traumaray and Gustang stuff has been hit and miss on whether we're focusing on character stuff or not, because the character stuff has been really good. But yeah, I'm just kind of worried. It's one of those things where people keep saying, you know, it's been ebbing and flowing. People will be really excited because there's been a good chapter or two for the scan readers. Meanwhile, we're getting some of the worst chapters in the series here. And then there have been times where it's like, oh my God, we're just impressed by this crazy Amazu flashback stuff. And the readers that are months in the future are like, oh God, there's some of the worst stuff in the series. So it's, you know, it's been very, very back and forth like that. And either way, I'll just post this video. I don't know. It's just hard after, you know, I started doing weekly Tower of God content back in Dollar Show, which is I think one of the best arcs in the series. And I went through nearly all of Hell Train week to week here on the channel. So covering stuff that's that good week to week versus covering the Sprout week to week, it has been at some points a little bit difficult with how bad some of the things have been. And I don't know. I'm just not feeling this chapter. It's got me worried because I'm like, okay, 11 chapters left. Let's, especially after last chapter where it seemed like things were really popping off, let's end things with a bang. Let's, you know, finish out this story and then, you know, fix things up. But then this has me worried. I'm like, are the next 10 chapters just not going to be great? I just don't even know what to expect. Either way, I'll end things here, though. Thank you for watching. Sorry for being so negative, but I'm going to be honest with what I, you know, cover on the channel. If things are really, really good, I'm going to talk about how great they are and how amazing they are and how much I love them. And if things are really not good, Tower of God's been really not good. So, like if you did like the video, comment down there, tell me what you thought of this week's chapter, my thoughts and reaction. Subscribe for more Tower of God, much more on the channel. Follow on Twitter if you want. If you want a link to the Discord server, it's free and open for anyone. If you want to help support the channel by dropping a super thanks, that's very much appreciated. If you want to help support the channel by hitting join down below to become a member, go to patreon.com/Haku of the Tubes, or a link will be in the description to become a patron. It'd be very much appreciated. It helps, you know, me to continue to make videos, and also you can get your name at the end of every video and get One Piece videos a bit early. Thank you to people who are patrons and channel members. Thank you to Chosen Regular Evan Holly, Magical Girls, FRNono, JA, and VD Ban, Cheriton Students, David Langstaff and Folded Ghoul, Slayer Candidates, SG and Stance Eater, and Pure Element Pater Diablo. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all next time.